I thought I'd begin this video with some shots of my quadcopter and hexcopter fleet. There's a DJI Phantom, there's the Nova QX, there's a Turret, 690, and last but not least, my latest addition, this little gem, the Blade 350 QX. The reason I showed you them all is that they're all basically using the same configurations on the radio. This one was converted to use a DX9. This one I fly with an XG14. This one I fly with an XG14. And this one is now converted to use a DX9. The reason I mention that is I need to have some kind of consistency between the controls, the switches, so in a panic situation you might hit the right switch instead of the wrong one. I showed you those different quadcopters was because the first thing I learned to fly was using this DJI transmitter. And as you can probably see there, it has the usual letters, if you're familiar with them, GPS, a couple of attitude modes, including basically freestyle flying. And over here we had the heading lock and course lock modes. So I became very used to flying these quadcopters with the switches in those positions. My switches now say
Smart mode.
Smart mode's up there.
Stability mode.
Stability mode, yep. And then
Flight mode 3.
which is actually photographic mode.
Stability mode. Smart mode.
Now I want to have agility mode. I was going to use the auxiliary 1 switch, but you know, agility mode isn't quite exactly what I wanted there, so I chose the mix switch down here on my radio because I'm mode 1, but it doesn't really matter which one you choose, but you can choose.
Agility mode.
And there's my agility mode. And the cool thing is that while it's in agility mode, this switch does nothing. However, return to home will still work.
Return home. Normal mode.
So we'll take it out of agility
Flight
mode.
mode 3.
And we have
Stability mode. Smart mode.
So, you might just be thinking, well, you know, that's just some switch allocation, and it's a pretty straightforward thing to do. And yes, it is. However, when you get down on the screen, you will also see the words.
Stability mode. Flight mode 3. Agility mode.
Basically what we've done is we've got visual confirmation, audio confirmation, and we're using the switches in a similar manner on all of the quadcopters or hexcopters that I own. The idea being that when you're moving from copter to copter, you're not going to get too confused. Plus, in my case, if you're using them as teaching aids, you want it to be fairly consistent. The primary on this one is definitely to have this
Stability mode.
position here.
Smart mode.
Those two to be the same. And if you hit it too far,
Flight mode 3.
it really just goes into photographic mode, so it's not too bad.
Smart mode.
And if you ever get to a point with a student where you can teach them agility mode, they have the option.
Agility mode. Smart mode.
But you can also disable that, so the student never does it. So what I'm going to do is take you on a journey into the DX9 flight modes, the power that the DX9 has, and then the flexibility to change things. That you might notice about this particular Blade 350 is it's been changed. Bearing in mind I'm going to teach people to fly in these things, we put some guards, just some carbon fiber guards, mounted them under the motors, recessed the plastic a little bit, so now when you tip over it doesn't cost me a blade. Second thing I did was, this is just aesthetics, I put a white set of white legs on. I thought it looked good. Then I added some trainer wheels, as I call them. They're actually golf balls, but they're soft ones. I don't know if you can see that, how they squeeze. They were like $9 at Target. And what that does is it lets you bounce a little bit without breaking the plastic. And then to make sure you know which way you're going, I'll do this once. I put a spotlight on the front. It's one of those little LED lights, and they're about $6 each. They make a big difference. And last but not least, if you look underneath, you will see, not very well, but you'll see the red lights on one side and the blue lights on the other. I could have changed those to green, I guess, if I found the right LEDs, but I do like to have the correct orientation. what I wanted to do was put the switches where I wanted the switches to be. It also means, for example, if you wanted to use the 3-position rate switch or a 3-position flight mode switch which exists on this radio, then all you really have to do is allocate the switches. What we're going to do first is spend some time setting this up. But I wanted you to know that these modes are set up, so first of all you get audible information, secondly you get visual information, and last but not least they're very flexible to change if you don't particularly like that style. The first thing I want to do is go in and set this up as if it had never been set up before for a Blade 350 QX. So the first thing I'm going to do is program up the QX from scratch. And one of the things that I like to try and throw in early into this explanation is one of the problems that everybody seems to run into is the word switch versus channel. When you say auxiliary 2 switch, if left alone, it will control auxiliary 2. But its identity isn't really auxiliary 2. On this radio, in actual fact, you'll see that it says E. So switch E will be auxiliary 2 switch when I use it. And the channels are really independent of the switches. And what we're going to do is an exercise where we're going to take all of that power that this radio has and make it do what we want it to do instead of what the radio wants to do. So the first thing I will do is turn down the volume of this beep, which drives me nuts. It also controls the volume of the voice. So we'll knock that down. And then what we'll do is we'll go to system level. System level I like to call the foundation of a model. It's one of those things that you set it up and it lays a map of how the radio is going to be used. So in this case, I'm starting from scratch, and I will edit out some of the slower processes, but let's show the model type as an airplane, yes. We'll say yes. Model name, we'll call modes. And this is one of my personal hates. This menu selection of alpha is ugly, and you can't see what's coming next. If you do it every day and lots of times, I assume eventually you get good at it. As I dance away through this. Now we have something that says we have 4 flight modes. The next thing, which is the most exciting part, is that we're going to go in and set up a bunch of F modes. But before we do that, I want to assign channels to switches. And in my case, the first thing I will tell you is do not touch the RX port assignments unless you have to. It's better to go down to the next screen. Well, I wish they made that screen first, and look at the channel input configuration. This tells you what the radio is going to do with each switch or channel that you have some access to. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to actually inhibit. When the box is flashing, you press clear and it says inhibited. Press again and you can go to the next channel. I'm going to use auxiliary 1 is the return to home, but I'm going to drive that channel with the gear switch. When this thing refocuses, we'll set that to H. Auxiliary 2, if you take a look at auxiliary 2, which is hiding, I get it in the camera, it's called E. And if we take a look and see what that one's called, it's already E, so I'm going to leave it there. Everything else is fine, I don't need to change anything. So we finished telling the radio what it's going to do. What we basically said is that when you hit the G switch. Oh, wrong switch. It should focus again. The H switch, which is actually up here for me, that's going to be return to home. That's the one I use for return to home. I like that switch. You might notice my throttle's on the other side, so I fly mode 1, so return to home is there, and I'm working on the throttle, I hit it, and I'm dealing with whatever issue I get when I switch it off. Auxiliary 2 is up here, and it's this big one, and that will be my green light, which is smart mode. I have chosen it to be stable, which is blue next, and then AP mode, which is purple next. So let's just go through what I've done with the switches. My gear switch, if I click it, moves channel 6, auxiliary 1, and that's return to home. Right, that's what that channel allocation did earlier on. Agility mode is achieved by going to one end of the gear channel or the other. But while I'm in agility mode, no matter what I do with this switch that changes the normal modes, you'll notice it either is at one end or the other. It does not ever go to the middle, which means even though it's changing position, because you got agility mode at the extreme ends, either end of the gear channel, you're good to go. So when I come out of agility mode, whatever it was, it says that smart mode. So I got smart mode, stability mode, and photo mode. When I hit agility mode, it goes straight there. And no matter what I do with the mode switch, I'm always in agility mode. I'll leave it in, I think it's in smart mode right now, the way we did this. I hit the switch, it comes back, it tells me I'm in smart mode, and you're done.